Thank you for joining me today on the AgentXcel podcast. And today I'm going to be doing another solo show. And this one's going to be on who's your crew? Who are the people that you hang out with? And what are the podcasts that you're listening to? And what events and masterminds are you going to on a monthly and bi-monthly basis? And I just want to talk about all this stuff that you have that's coming into your life on a daily basis. And you want to make sure that you're consuming the right content daily so that you can get to where you want to go. So I hope you enjoyed today's show. What's up, everybody? Thank you today for joining me on the AgentXcel podcast. And today I want to go over who's your tribe, like who's the crew that you hang out with. And I think that's just super important to discuss anymore is who are you hanging out with and who is your crew? So let's dive into this because I've got a lot of different ways that I talk about who my crew is. And I think the interesting part is that most people just think of, who their friends are, like who they hang out with. Maybe they're, maybe they're colleagues, maybe they're fellow coworkers, things like that. But, I think of your crew as a lot of different people. And we'll go over different topics, but it's not only who you hang out with and how much that matters, but also when I say who's my crew, it's podcast that I'm listening to, it's social media, it's events and masterminds, it's my actual friends that I hang out with. So when I'm talking about who's my crew I'm hanging out with, it's my whole entire life of when I get in my car in the morning and go to Starbucks and get a coffee, what am I listening to? Like, am I listening to the news that's giving me an update on today's current event? And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, is that what you want at that time and place? For example, when I get up in the morning, if I check like a social media and I see something that like is disturbing, it just changes my whole mood for the day. So I might have just been getting up with a lot of energy, gonna attack the day. And then I see something on social media. For example, this happens actually quite a bit on my feed on Facebook is I'll run across something like a dog injury and someone will post like a graphic photo and like it just takes me a totally different way emotionally. Like I could have been completely amped up to conquer my day. And the second I see that, my mood changes and my heart just hurts and it takes me in a different direction. So that's why I'm saying like, who's your crew that you hang out with? So let's go back to just that example. You get up, what are you listening to? What are you doing? What are you reading? You go get your coffee or whatever you do for your morning routine. What's the podcast you're listening to? Who are you scrolling through on social media, on Instagram? And so that's today's topic. And once again, a quick show, but I think it's something that we all need to set up some boundaries around on what we're doing, who we're listening to, and who we're allowing into our life and what we're hearing on a consistent basis. Because I believe that who you hang out with matters. That matters. I mean, who you hang out with is almost who you will become, and what you listen to will be the direction that you go. And so for probably 20 years now, I've always been into listening to educational stuff when it used to be CDs and then now it's podcasts. But that was something that I always knew, like what I feed myself with on a daily basis is going to make or break the direction of my future. Because if it's in your mind all the time, that's just kind of the direction you go. So let's talk about podcasts first, because, I know a lot of people listen to them, but probably not enough. And so when you're in your car, I think that we should be using our car as more of like our education spot where we're getting knowledge that we want. So instead of listening to music or the radio, that we get things into us that we're wanting to learn about. So like for right now, the podcasts that I'm listening to are things on investing. So in real estate, for example, like Bigger Pockets. And how I know this to be true is I used to listen to Bigger Pockets all the time back in the day, and I don't as much anymore, but I still do occasionally. But I used to listen to it like consistently, every single show that came out. And every one for like probably 4 years I did. And during that 4 years, I bought a lot of rental property. So it just shows you that like that's the mode I was in. And I would just listen to people's stories and they would interview people on how they bought this rental property and was it creative financing or did they put 25% down and where did they buy and what were the pitfalls and what were the strategies. But I was feeding myself with that consistently for several years. And that's the direction that my life went. And now it's almost just become second nature that I don't even have to think about investing. So I don't listen to it as much anymore, but there was a time and place, there was a season for that knowledge that, ingrained that investing in me that I went and went after it. And now, like I said, it's second nature. So it's not something that I have to do all the time. So podcast on investing, podcast on money. Like right now I'm listening to a podcast by Ben Kinney. I think it's called the Wealth Series. I think the podcast is called Built How. But if you Google Ben Kinney, I believe it's Built How. But that series right now is on how to handle your finances and how to handle investing. And it's phenomenal. And I recommend it. But even though I know how to budget and things like that, like I still feed myself those things on a daily basis because that's important to me. So he has an episode that comes out once a week right now called the Wealth Series. It's fabulous. And then podcasts, I listen to real estate podcasts. So Next Level Agents is a podcast that I listen to all the time where Kevin Kaufman interviews other realtors around the country and they talk about how they built their businesses. And I've been listening to those types of podcasts for years because I always wanted to know, like, what are people doing? And some of the podcasts I listen to, and I don't resonate at all with the person talking, but there might just be something in there where I'm like, that's interesting. Or it just challenges me on some limiting belief I have. Or you'll hear about somebody doing, a production level and having such a free life and free time that you just get questioned and you start thinking. Also right now, podcasts that I'm following are doctors and listening to doctors talk about different things as I get older. That's super important to me. So I want to keep feeding myself with that type of stuff. So like I said, when I talk about my crew, most people just say, hey, you're just talking about your 5 or 6 close friends. And I'm talking about different sections in my life that I break down and say, no, these are all people in my crew. And some of these people don't even know me, right? But I feel like I know them because I'm just listening to them all the time. So podcast is one. And next is social media, like who's in your crew there. So let's talk about Facebook and Instagram. So, on Facebook, you have a lot of friends that you went to high school with, past coworkers, people you went to church with, and then the same on Instagram. And what I want you to do is I want you to protect who's in your crew. So I have actually went through on a consistent basis when I'm on social media, and I'll actually, I don't know if the right word is block people, but they don't know that I've unfriended them, but I've hid them where I don't see their stuff anymore. Like people that just complain all the time or people that I just have nothing in common with where, I don't want to, be rude and unfriend them, but I also don't want to see their stuff on a consistent basis because it doesn't bring any joy or value into my life. And what I've also noticed is the difference between anymore getting older and Facebook and Instagram and how, on my Facebook, it can be very, a lot of sharing of things, like a lot of sharing of political things. It could be sharing of stories and cooking stuff. And then I go on Instagram and I realize it's kind of a different vibe over there. It's not as much sharing of stuff and it's more original content. And so I want to talk more on Instagram and how I've only had an Instagram for a little while now. And what I realize is it's almost, my crew because I follow people that are doctors and they're talking about how to, exercise and how to eat properly and just things that we weren't really taught in school and things that's not really, out to the masses. And I want to hear what their opinions are. And I follow fitness people on working out and what they're eating and how they're exercising and their routines. I listen to some people on mindset and how to get your mindset right early in the morning. And what I think now is like when I'm on Instagram, I'm following people that are more people that I inspire to be. And it just every day keeps me motivated. And as I'm scrolling through Instagram on my entertainment time, right? So on my entertainment time, I'm scrolling through and it's like, okay, you see someone and it's like, a new workout and I'm watching their form. And then it's, this lady who's meal prepping and she's talking about her macros and I'm learning about that. And then I see this doctor and he's talking about how to get more salt and, magnesium in your life so that you're not dehydrated and don't have migraines. And that was a big one to me because I have migraines all the time. So, that's where I'm using now that social platform for entertainment, and I'm using it. Okay, like at least if I'm on there and I'm getting that entertainment, these people are in my crew and they're giving me information now that I'm doing this for entertainment, but I'm also getting value out of this where I'm not scrolling through like Facebook and just thinking like, man, why are you posting this? Why are you so negative? Anytime I see that kind of energy where I'm questioning what people are doing, I bounce out of there because that's not good energy. I want to be inspired. I don't want to be thinking about what other people are doing and why do they do this. So that's on the social media side. Now, let's go over to events and masterminds. So if you're a realtor, you probably heard this a lot where there's, masterminds you can go to, and sometimes you got to be in different production levels to get in certain ones. And sometimes there's lunch and learns. I invite agents to those just to learn. And I learn so much from those masterminds, and I'm always looking for another one, to go to. So for example, this Thursday, I'm going to one. I'm actually paying to get in the room. It's in Tempe. I think it was only $300, but there'll be about 40 people in there that are, they've got to be over a certain production level. And we get in that room and we solve each other's problems. People throw out the challenges they're having, and some of them are high level challenges on, they have, $1 million and they want to know where to invest in. Some people are like, hey, I'm closing 200 transactions and I need more leverage so I can have a free life. And the next person, is talking about their challenge. And in there for 6 hours, we solve those challenges. And I have learned so much over the last 17 years in those masterminds. It's where I built my company. And it's not just the knowledge in the mastermind, it's also the relationships that I've built. So I've left masterminds before and I've gotten people's numbers, and I've actually, contacted them later because I knew like their skill was a certain thing. And at certain times I'm like, oh, I need to learn more about that. Let me hit up this person, or I need to know more about that. Let me call this person. So it's not just the knowledge in the room and getting your, problem solved, or your business problem solved, but it's also the people that you're meeting that you can connect with and learn from their business, and you can grow your business kind of like theirs and have a plug and play. And you can teach them how you're getting business. They can teach you how they're getting business, and you guys can both get more business because of it. And so, I think about masterminds and what I've learned, like I said, over the last 17 years, and almost all my systems were built by people that I've learned from in masterminds. And my ISA, that inside sales agent model that I have in my company, I learned that in a mastermind. My showing partner, the guy who shows my homes for me, that was, learned in a mastermind. Last year's mastermind, we had somebody come in and talk about, taxes and people who own rental properties and all the tax benefits you can save. And that one hit me hard, because if I wouldn't have went to that mastermind, I saved a ton of money on my 2022 taxes. And if I wouldn't have went to that mastermind for $299, I would not have learned this. And the amount of money I saved was amazing. And so like, when someone says like, oh, why do you go to these masterminds, or why do you go to this training? And I'm like, that's where it's at. And I get some people are like, oh, well, I go to my office meetings, they're not that great. Or I went to this thing that the board of realtors put on, it wasn't that great. And I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm not talking about, your team leaders training or your brokerages training. I'm talking about getting people in a room that are trying to build a business and they want to solve each other's problems, and they're givers, and they give of their knowledge like it's a currency, and everybody's trading it like it's a currency. And it's so fun once you get involved in that arena, because you realize you crave them. So for example, like I said, Ben Kenny, who has the podcast Build How, and he's having that wealth series, he's got a event, I believe, at the end of March that I want to get to in Palm Springs. And I read the lineup of what it was, and I'm like, I have to be there. It's on, tax strategies, and it's on where people are investing and still getting a 16% ROI, which I'm not getting anymore on my money when I'm investing. And so like that one's more for me. It's not really how to sell more real estate. It's almost like what to do with your profits that you're making and where to invest them so that you can make more money. So like, that's something that I want to get to, because I know in a year or two, I want to look back on that mastermind and I'm at the next level because of that knowledge that I got. So, and then company events, like if you belong to a big brokerage, you can go to out of state and go to their, like national conferences, like get to that stuff. That stuff is important. And you might only go there and learn one or two things, but when you come back, if you implement those could be game changers. And then last but not least, when I talk about a crew, is just your real friends, like the people that you spend your time with. All the other stuff that I talked about outside of mastermind and events, but the podcast that you're listening to and the Instagram people that you're following, that's all like, afar. That's just stuff you're feeding yourself with. But I always say that's a part of your crew, because it really is like, that's who you're hanging out with. And probably the most interesting thing now is like, we're hanging out with people virtually on social media and through podcasts and YouTube. We're hanging out with people that we feel like we know, and we may have never even talked to them. And so that's what we've got to make sure now that we're in a new world of how we have our crew built around us, that we're protecting it and that we're not being around people that we don't feel like we should be around, that won't, the people that won't get us to our goals and what we're trying to accomplish. So the last one is your friends, like the people you legitimately eat lunch with, go hang out with, go to a baseball game with, that you play cards with. That's a tough one because the people you hang out with, like, it matters. You will turn into those people. And, we all have old friends in our life that we still want to stay connected with that might not have the same goals as we do. And I say, what, I'm never one to say like cut off those relationships. I'm just saying if they're not trying to get where you want to go, that hanging out with them every day, all the time, weekly might not be beneficial if you don't have the same goals. That doesn't mean don't hang out with them anymore. That doesn't mean like, hey, our friendship's done because we don't have the same vision. I'm just saying protect where you're going, because if you hang out with those people over and over and over, they can sometimes take you backwards. And if you're not trying to go backwards, then you've got to hang out with different people. So, and your goals, you really, as you're doing all this, you want to eliminate things. You want to eliminate all the things around you that you don't feel like are building you up. And one that I want to go into that I want to touch on lightly, but I still want to touch on is just like sometimes like the news consumption that we're taking in. And, I just think, of where times are at right now and how some people just have so much anxiety over political things that are going on. And, I kind of sometimes wonder, I'm like, hey, are things different? And yes, I do think they are. But were they always, was things always different? I think so. I think in every era, there's something that's really big at the time. And I think there's a lot of people that disagree on things. And, I like to be in the know, but anymore, just like my news consumption, I used to consume a lot of podcasts on news. And like I said, I'm not saying, put your head in the sand and not know anything. And I'm not saying don't go vote. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I'm just saying like, consuming yourself with, like, I was consuming myself all the time with podcasts on the news and just like topics of today. And I realized, probably about a year ago, it wasn't serving me. So I went through my app on my podcast and just started, deleting most of the shows that I was following on like topics of, news. And I just thought like, man, and I'm actually a year into it and I still listen to a little bit and know kind of what's in the know, but I don't just listen to it over and over and over and listen to things where they're ranting about it over and over. Cause I think that it gets into you and it can change who you are. So, and then, like, for example, you get on, social media, like eliminating some people on there that you just are always like, why are they doing this? I just don't think it's healthy to have those thoughts on a daily basis. So that is today's show of who is your crew. And please, like, you guys will hear me say this over and over and over. It's just be methodical about your life. Like, think it through. Like, just don't be on default every day and like, I just get in the car and I listen to the radio and, I listen to this podcast because of this, or, I'm watching this TV show because of this. And, I'm hanging out with them because I've hung out with them my whole entire life since 6th grade. And, I follow these people on social media because I went to high school with them or they're a previous coworker. Like, start weeding things out and saying like, this is where I want my life to go. And you need to feed yourself with that stuff on a daily basis. Like, if that's where you want to go, feed yourself through the podcast you listen to, the social media, the people you follow. You want to do it through the events that you're going to. Find events where you're like, that inspires me. Like, that's who I want to be. I want to be around those people. And what I found at those events is you end up being those people's friends because you're so like-minded. When you get there, they have the same thoughts you do. They're like, I want to have a friend group that thinks like this. And you're going there and you're like, I want to have a friend group that thinks like this. And all of a sudden you wake up in a few years and like, wow, like that's why your friends are all now on the same trajectory as you're trying to get to, because you guys met at the same places because you have like-minded interests. And I can think of some of my, dear friends right now, and I met them through masterminds because we think the same. We like to talk about the same things. We like to challenge ourselves in the same way. And then also your friends, pick them closely, pick them wisely, but solve all those problems. Like I said, podcasts, social media, masterminds, events, and your friends. I'm going to leave you guys all with that today. And just make sure that you're writing down where you want to go, feeding yourself with that positive stuff to get you there. And I hope you guys all have a good week, and we're going to talk again next Wednesday.